We had very substantive discussion about history and archaeology, and probably nothing of those projects would be happening and be successful without our next speaker, whose name is David LORDKIPANIDZE. And so he will have I think I already expect very interesting conversation with our another David friend, David Green, prominent American journalist who lived in Moscow for many years and traveled many different parts of that space, Eurasia, visited Georgia many times and knows Georgia well, but not as well as Dr. LORDKIPANIDZE knows, of course. So David LORDKIPANIDZE is, I would say, he's a star scientist who discovered this wonderful site near Tbilisi called Manisi. And David, you want to talk a little bit about that? And but everything that is happening in Georgia last 20 years, probably 2 decades, in the cultural space, in the museum development space, in a new archaeological discoveries, and then making those discoveries prominent to the world, David LORDKIPANIDZE is behind that. So I'm very, very happy to have these two fine gentlemen meeting each other on Zoom today. And David. So David Green will start, and then we'll have some interventions from Dr. LORDKIPANIDZE, who is, by the way, a member of American Academy of Science, so that we all know.
David, how are you? Uh-oh, we might have a problem. We're not hearing you. We're seeing you, and I think you're...
Oh, it's my fault. So.
There we go. How are things in Georgia?
Oh, in Georgia is never boring, so it's fine.
Just having been there, I think 7 times, I think I can agree with that.
Yeah, but,
well, it's an honor to speak to you. I will say my wife and I, my wife Rose, who's on a panel later, we've been 7 times, and I would very much love to move there permanently. So if you have any jobs at the museum, I am all ears.
Yes, with great pleasure. Of course, we will find. Yeah.
Thank you.
Communication would be one of the key.
Thank you. Well, I want to mention, I mean, your name and your work were so associated with this this tremendously important discovery in 2017 that really redefined for many people in the wine world how to think about Georgia and its place in the history of wine. Can you just remind us exactly what was discovered and what we learned?
Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. I would say, I know you had already discussions about Georgia, about history. I would mention 2 points which is really clearly associated with Georgia. And I think one of the keys of our discovery is that we have fantastic biodiversity. You know, the world, we have 35 hotspots, and one of the hotspots is Caucasus, but also this is hotspot and where you can study evolution, and you can study also long-term cultural history. And I think another big advantage, we have uninterrupted culture, and we have all periods of humankind presented. So it was a big chance to find maybe earliest traces of winemaking, but it happened not by chance. I think that the key of all it and understanding is that this territory between these 2 big water systems, Black Sea and Caspian Sea, which is very fruitful territory, had this long history, and we are like, may I say, archive of knowledge and history. And when we worked on the project, and I saw my friends and colleagues, Patrick McGovern, Steve Batyuk, and any other my colleagues, of course we couldn't immediately anticipate that we should have earliest wine traces. But exactly this opportunity that you can combine, one hand, archaeology, exploration, humanity, culture, and from other hand, all this modern technology and interdisciplinary research, this was a chance to see earliest residues, which was identified in biomolecular archaeological lab in Pennsylvania, where you are, I imagine, right?
Indeed.
But it's not enough, right? It's not should be just, we had a fantastic opportunity to have direct dating of these jars and to see also paleobotanical evidence, but plus cultural, you see, for Georgians always you can feel the wine is not just beverage. So to make this long story very short, we were lucky to find it, but from other hand, this was also this all long-term research which we have in this area and opportunities to have a look from biocultural point of view, not just from one side of it.
I'm just amazed that the science and what you discovered. I mean, this was really rock solid research and discovery. I mean, didn't you even find the carcasses of fruit flies on this pottery? I mean, this was, the evidence was very clear that this was old and it very was related to wine.
That's very true, and this is the chance. I think this is the also window to look at how we can study early history. Is it early history just few artifacts, what we can see, or some traces? Now to look all paleoecosystem, and when you can look on it through our research, now we have an opportunity slowly to reconstruct many components of the ecosystem, including the soils, bacteria, etc., etc. So this study of wine history is, as you said, it's big breakthrough as a timing, but plus it's also a part of big context, part of development of early agriculture. So you see that you have changes in human behavior. You have new territories where you have already developed culture. And I'm happy to say that we're continuing research in this area. And we're greedy, you know, it's not.
I want to ask you, I mean, this wasn't surprising to you and others, just given Georgia's place in the world. I mean, this is a country and a region that was for so long just a channel of migration for people, but also grapevines, right?
Yes, grapevines, and you see, this is exactly a point how what you are studying in our field, let's say paleoanthropology, human evolution. You are looking from different perspectives, and one is the migrations, of course, and you can see migrations of one hand, animals, and we studied it, let's call it biogeographical approach, but also humans, and now you can see also migration of some grapes. And I think it's migration not just to Georgia, there are migration from Georgia, even grapes, I think. And if we have humans from Africa, Saperavi grapes went to South Africa from Georgia.
So people were traveling with these grapes to plant them and make wine in other parts of the world.
It's not excluded. And when you are, it can be transmitted by chance, but it can be also transmitted later by trade, you know. And generally, I think it's among the big questions of science is always which animal or which plant has been domesticated, right? When it becomes that already cultivated. I think Caucasus is one of the key areas for different plants. Like we are looking from grapes to wine, now we are looking also from wheat to bread. So to look on the very early wheat. So I think this is a different opportunity for us, for Georgian scientists, to be a platform of study of different perspectives.
Well, so let's just nail something down here. When we're all at a bar in conversation with people and talking to them about Georgian wine, can we safely say, this is the country where wine first was discovered? Or is there still some debate about that?
No, I don't. I think today we can say for sure the earliest traces of winemaking are discovered in Georgia. That's no doubt. Tomorrow it could be in other places, but today it's like this.
But right now we're safe.
You know, Mamuka mentioned about my research, and you know that I'm studying more earliest period human migration. So we traced earliest human presence out of Africa, and today it's documented. Maybe one day it will be older one. Today,
That's the exciting part of your job. Maybe tomorrow you're going to make a discovery and it's a game changer.
Yes, and it's interesting that these finds of 1.8 million fossils, and in fact, National Geographic just published wonderful book, 100 Wonders in Archaeology, and the Manisi site is one of them. And it's only maybe 50, 60 kilometers from place where earliest wine traces has been discovered. So it's a really amazing area where you can study really very early periods of our past.
Okay, so it's fun talking about thousands of years ago, but let's come to the present time. We know now that you've had this amazing discovery. 8,000 years ago, there was winemaking in Georgia. I'm just amazed that when you travel to Georgia today and you visit families and they take you and show you their qvevris, I mean, the winemaking process and tradition, I mean, it hasn't changed all that much, which is astounding.
I think this is exactly when I was talking about cultural processes. I'm meaning this, that we have this uninterrupted culture and traditions, and qvevri is like flagstock, one of these. You see how you can keep. And I think this transferring knowledge is always so important for humanities. And I think we, in this case, have this privilege to have this knowledge starting 8,000 years ago, and it continues.
Can you talk about why wine is so much part of the fabric of Georgian society and culture? Because I mean, I remember one trip that my wife and I took. I mean, they were handing us bottles of wine as we went through immigration at the airport. There is a sense of pride that is unlike anything you see in other countries. So can you talk about the root of that?
I think the root started from the very early period. We had an exhibition in Bordeaux where we presented history of Georgia through wine. And I would say that every period of humankind and of course the Georgian history, wine had an important role, starting from like beverage as invention, then wine became also product of exchange, and then it was part of royal beverage and ritual drinking. And from Christianity, I think this was also maybe one of the important parts of our identity. You know, when we had invasions, our ancestors were keeping cellars, we call it marane, not just for wine cellars, also as an altar. So wine, keeping wine, it was more than just keeping traditions. So it's a real, always, it's in our DNA, may I say.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a belief that if you're a Georgian, you are a winemaker, or at least a wine enthusiast. I mean, for people who have never been there, I mean, help them understand that there is no way to avoid wine when you visit a restaurant, a business, or someone's home. I mean, I feel like I come into a home and I realize that there's a qvevri right outside and they're serving me wine, not that this family bought in a store, but that they literally made in their backyard.
That's true. That's very true. And particularly after Russian embargo, I would say we got incredible improvement of wine quality. I would say as a consumer of the wine, because I don't think there are many Georgians who are not consumers. Now more and more who are doing production, but consumers, I think, are still more. And I would say that it's real. I'm proud to say that work of Georgian agencies, particularly wine agencies, and then of course wine producers put now Georgia on a map, not just as older wine, but also quality wine.
You know, we don't often always talk about geopolitics and wine, but you brought up the Russian embargo, and I was living in Moscow when that was in place, which shut off a very important market to Georgian wine. I mean, you're a historian. As you look at that moment, how did that change things in terms of Georgia, in terms of wine, in terms of the role that wine plays as such an important part of the identity?
I think it was strongly. We were a little bit spoiled in Soviet time. You had a much better experts around you who can speak about. We were spoiled that Georgian wine could be sold out just as a name, but the quality went down. And since embargo, we went out of Soviet market, out of former Soviet market. And I think this was the opportunity. Like obstacles makes you stronger, right? So it's a more philosophical issue. Yes.
Well, when you all discovered this in 2017, your message to the world was, we don't just want the world to know that Georgian wine is old. We want the world to know that Georgian wine is also good. What is that relationship? I mean, is there something about having such a long tradition and the fact that winemaking has sustained in this style for so many years that makes the wine not just old, but also good?
Yeah, maybe winemakers can answer directly on this question, but not all. But may I say that what I already mentioned, when we were starting this project, then I can see my friend Leon Davitashvili is here, Minister of Agriculture. We were discussing, he was that time the head of the wine agency, how to build projects. And we agree that we should not try to claim we're earliest, right? We're just showing evidence and uninterrupted culture. And I think in a nutshell, this is a key of it. We have uninterrupted culture. It started from 8,000 or maybe earlier. This is an issue, but you can clearly say during all periods of even cultural changes, right, in development, we always had wine and high quality, and wine had a role, not just beverages, I said. This was part of a ritual, Christian ritual, first of all, and art and inspiration. So, traditions, let me repeat it, played a crucial role.
Because that's the difficult thing, right? I mean, when people come to a restaurant or, a bar, maybe here in the US, they don't consider themselves historians. They're not on a journey to think about archaeology. They want to drink a delicious wine and have a good time. So that I think is one of the important challenges to figure out how to message the quality of Georgian wine and use this unbelievable history and tradition as a strength to make that message stronger.
Yes, but it's added value to be elder, right? But plus, it's not just oldest wine, but also we could say that in very small territory, when I mentioned biodiversity, you could speak about diversity of grapes, you see. You have so big variety of grapes from this small territory that it gives you opportunity to really produce different types of wine.
And how does that biodiversity differ from other parts of the world? What makes Georgia truly special when it comes to that?
May I say that I mentioned the two big water system, Black Sea and Caspian Sea, plus Caucasus from the north. It means that you have climatic changes less dramatic. When you have in the open areas that when you have climatic cycles, you have much stronger influence. So still today we have plants in Western Georgia which lived several million years. So this is in this case, this bee refugia, this is this advantage. Of course, it's starts from very early period. We're starting story of great apes. We're starting of different animals, and it was always like this. But now we are talking exactly Neolithic time, 8,000, 9,000 years ago. You have much more stable systems since that time. But today you have climate changes, right? You have age changes which influence. So that's why you are following it, and sometimes you are using past as analog of the modern systems.
I want to leave a couple minutes for some other people to ask questions. I don't want to hog all of your time, but when people leave here today, after listening to you, what is one thing that you hope they take away from your experience, both as a Georgian and someone who has studied, you know, this rich history?
So I would say the main message is this is a small country with a huge diversity of the nature and the opportunity to study all stages of humankind.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, and may I say that this country has rich past, but also this country is a place where people can create and create new discoveries.
Why is that so part of Georgian pride and culture, that creative spirit?
Yeah, I think this is the future of humankind. You should be creative, you should open eyes, you should be, without it, you know, how you can have a progress. And I think creativity and curiosity is what we should develop. My job beside of scientist is to be director of museum. And I think task is public outreach to spread that message that we need to be continuously curious and to invent new things, creative.
Well, let me make sure. I'd love to see if anyone has questions in the audience, and I think we have some microphones back there. So, David, you'll be able to hear them.
Maybe I'll start, if I may. So,
I think Mamuka wants to start.
Yeah. I know, maybe you can tell us a little bit about, you mentioned just a few seconds ago about museums, and I would like you to mention like most distinct sort of projects that you were focused on in the last several years, particularly this Vani Museum that has particular importance in Georgian recent history, I think.
Yeah, now I will be proud that during pandemic in 22, we opened 2 new museums. One museum was a regional museum where we had opportunity to tell also a story of earliest wine in Bolnisi region. And second is story of ancient kolkhiz. Ancient kolkhiz was maybe most known myth. It's the biggest known PR for Georgia, which has been done, right? Jason, Argonauts, Golden Fleece, and we have more Greek authors, but we need also evidence. And I think Vani Museum is one of the key to see this evidence. We created this museum. Wine plays very important role in this museum. We have part that's Dionys presented, where all the cycle with this accompanying persons goddess. But to say that this is also for us important to develop regional museums and to be part of big research clusters, in this case, study of Black Sea antiquity. And when we are talking about history of Georgia and about identity, Christian identity, I would say that like several countries, Greco-Roman countries, we also had own background to develop Christianity, and this Vani Museum tells the story what was before Christianity.
Are there other questions? I know you have, someone has it on the tip of their tongue.
Better to come to Georgia to have a look at us.
I have a question. I have a couple of questions. If nobody else has questions, I have a lot. The first question, I know geology was part of the study as well, and I was really struck by the idea of landscapes and geological ideas. So obviously Georgia being a land of mountains, right, is an important part of the diversity. But I'm wondering if you can wax a little poetic about that idea. There's the idea of landscapes is also somewhat a spiritual idea. And there's obviously, as you tied, that wine is both a thing of a place, but also connected to the kind of religious and spiritual side of human beings. And I think that's one of the things that's interesting about it. So I know you did some geological studies. I'm interested to see if you can explore or expand a little bit more about what a culture living in along mountains, you know, might have influenced both its traditions with regards to wine and maybe it is a particular kind of religious connection too. And then I have a second question if nobody else does.
First of all, I would say one of the diversity, what you can see here is around vertical zonality. So it's a mountainous country. So this is another reason why you have diversity. And you can see all climatic zones through vertical zonality. So geological history is very important to have a look. And as I told you, Georgia is a mountainous country, and Caucasus, which has a high mountains, it's an advantage. It protects from cold mesas from the north. And we can speak about geological history in a big time frame, right? Glacials, interglacials, but also in micro places. And this is, let's call it micro, maybe this is not a good word, but to see all the local geology where are the excavations. It's a foothills. And it's interesting that it's not connected, of course, with period, but it's an area, volcanic area, all volcanoes area, all this Quemocartle we call Javachete. So the volcanoes are very well for dating, particularly when you are studying early period. So geology is extremely important. I mean, it's a science. And to talking about mountain philosophy, of course, we can speak about mountainous ethnology, anthropology, ecosystems, cultural systems. I would use also one example Mamuka mentioned about museums. I would strongly recommend to see also one of our museums, Svaneti Mountains. Svaneti is a mountainous region where we have fantastic nature, beautiful architecture, but also it's like island of Byzantine culture. So you can see cultural processes which were already destroyed in Byzantine, you can see in mountains. So I think many different issues can be explored, and among them is of course connection with mountainous systems.
Hi, David, I love what you said about being continuously curious and continually creating. I'm curious if you would describe the Georgian wine culture as being art or science.
Oh, it's a combination. It's a dialogue between art and science. I love it, of course. It's exactly a combination of art and science, and wine is invention. When we are talking about wine, you couldn't have wine with just one event, you see. I imagine Patrick already was talking about wine, you know, grape juice has been used maybe by Homo erectus already, but you see how we are creating wine and continuing, I agree. It's a combination, science and art. So wine is a culture.
Well, David, we're all going to live by your advice and live by the Georgian way and all continuously be creative. That's a wonderful message to say goodbye on. It's really, this has been an honor, and I hope I get to meet you in person on my next trip to Georgia.
Okay, you are very welcome. And good luck with conference.
Thank you so much.